As weeks go, it hasn't been a great one for Donald Trump. First, Joe Biden stood down as his opponent and was replaced by the much younger and energetic Kamala Harris. And now there are increasingly difficult questions people are asking about his pick for vice president, J.D. Vance. And no, I'm not talking about questions over whether he once had sex with a couch. Yes, that was a real headline from the Associated Press. No, the serious questions are more centred on Vance's attitude to women and women's rights, including on whether women should be allowed to cross state lines to get abortions. In a recently unearthed recording, he said this.
Okay, look, here's the situation. Let's say Roe versus Wade is overruled. Ohio bans abortion, in 2022 or let's say 2024. And then, every day, George Soros sends a 747 to Columbus to load up disproportionately Black women to get them to go have abortions in California. And of course, the left will celebrate this as a victory for diversity. That's kind of creepy.
Health justice is when we exterminate working class Black people.
Something like that could, that would be a really weird turn of events that could happen, yes.
And it's like, if that happens, do you need some federal response to prevent it from happening? Because it's really creepy. And, I'm pretty sympathetic to that, actually.
Very weird hearing J.D. Vance calling someone else or something else creepy. Obviously, abortion, the Democrats really, really want to run on abortion at this general election because the Republican position to ban abortion is not popular, right? It has some powerful supporters, and obviously within the Republican Party, when it comes to sort of primaries, especially the evangelical vote, very much in favor of heavily restricting abortion. But among the general American public, this is one of the issues where the Republican Party is most out of step with the country at large. So if Kamala Harris can sort of attack J.D. Vance and Donald Trump on the issue of abortion, she's going to be very, very pleased with that. Also worth saying, this hypothetical example where you've got George Soros paying for predominantly Black women to get chartered planes to states where abortion is legal. It's completely invented and sort of contains rather a number of racial tropes. In another resurfaced video, Vance calls Kamala Harris a childless cat lady.
Saying is that we're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children. And how does it make any sense that we've turned our country over to people who don't really have a direct stake in it?
That clip has received enormous pushback online, especially as Vance has previously voted against protecting women's access to IVF. Jennifer Aniston posted this on her Instagram. I truly can't believe this is coming from a potential vice president of the United States. All I can say is, Mr. Vance, I pray that your daughter is fortunate enough to bear children of her own one day. I hope she will not need to turn to IVF as a second option because you are trying to take that away from her too. Kamala Harris's family has also responded. The context here is that while Kamala Harris doesn't have biological children, she does have 2 stepchildren with her husband, Doug Emhoff, and his former partner, so the mother of those children, has released this statement. For over 10 years since Cole and Ella were teenagers, Kamala has been a co-parent with Doug and I. She is loving, nurturing, fiercely protective, and always present. I love our blended family and am grateful to have her in it. Ella Emhoff, so one of those children, also chimed in on social media saying, quote, how can you be childless when you have cutie pie kids like Cole and I? This is not necessarily the fight Donald Trump would have wanted to be having. And it's becoming ever more apparent that Vance could prove a drag, not a boost, to the Republican ticket. This is analysis from CNN.
He does worse in his home region at minus 16 points than he does in the average of all polls, which is a minus 5-point net favorability rating. So the people who know him best, the region that knows him best, they like him even less than America likes him. And of course, as you pointed out, again, in that kind intro, is he is historically unpopular for a VP nominee coming out of his first convention as the VP nominee.
All right, so let's specifically look at some former Republican presidential candidates. What do you see?
Yeah, you mentioned Sarah Palin. How about Dan Quayle as well? These are two folks who I think most people remember as not being particularly popular. The amazing thing was coming out of their conventions, they actually were pretty popular. Quayle with a plus 15-point net favorability rating. Sarah Palin with a plus 26-point net favorability rating. Again, Vance at minus 5 points is just off the charts and falling off the chart in the wrong direction. Not up above the chart, but down below the chart. The fact is, he is historically unpopular, even more so than VP nominees, who of course went on to infamy, at least in terms.
Well, I mean, right. So you look at what happened to those two, and they plunged. Some may say, well, maybe there's nowhere to go but up for Vance, but in margins, that's not true. It can get worse.
It can get
I
definitely
just don't know
worse.
which way it will go.
It can get worse. And Vance's appearances since being picked as candidate for vice president don't make it seem like his popularity is going to soar anytime soon.
It is the weirdest thing to me. Democrats say that it is racist to believe, well, they say it's racist to do anything. I had a Diet Mountain Dew yesterday and one today. I'm sure they're going to call that racist too, but it's good. I love you guys. But
Very David Brent. I suppose maybe Donald Trump can sort of carry the comedian element of the ticket, and Vance is allowed to be sort of criminally unfunny, laughing at his own jokes that do not land whatsoever. Do you think we're starting to see the cracks in the Trump campaign here?
I don't know if cracks is the right word. I don't think he's a good pick. But realistically, people don't lose elections because of their vice president pick. That's just not happened before. They showed Sarah Palin's popularity. She was very popular amongst the Republican base in 08. She was very popular. It was like a major media phenomenon, and it made zero difference, right? Because Obama was, the real deal for the Democrats. So I think actually the most popular vice president in U.S. history, I think, or in recorded history with regards to polling, was Al Gore in 2000. I think, he had like plus 35. He was incredibly popular, something like that. And of course, he lost the election in 2000 against George W. I suppose you could say he didn't lose. He didn't lose the popular vote, and actually he won Florida, so he should have been the president. But the point is, he didn't become president. So I think that's something worth bearing in mind. Normally, when you pick a vice president, a running mate, you try and select somebody who's going to mitigate and minimize your own deficiencies and weaknesses. Obviously, Trump has many of those, which makes the selection of J.D. Vance all the stranger, because if he does have any perceived strengths, they're broadly the same as Trump's. The people that like Vance are going to like Trump. There's very few people out there who dislike Trump but really like J.D. Vance. So I don't really understand it. I grasp the fact that they didn't want, a sort of quote-unquote mainstream Republican apparatchik like they did with Mike Pence the last time round, because maybe long-term in terms of your political strategy to execute on change in office, that's not great. You don't want that. You want somebody who's totally on side with you. I totally understand that. But you do want somebody while you're campaigning who will help you with your deficiencies. So I suppose I'd condense it into a simple formulation, which is that if Trump wins, I think J.D. Vance is going to be a great vice president for him from the perspective of the kind of political project he wants to initiate. But they've got to win first. And from the perspective of campaigning, I agree with you. I think there's some really conspicuous cracks here, and I certainly don't think he's the best person for the job.
Yeah, that's what people are saying, basically, isn't it? That he chose J.D. Vance after he'd just survived an assassination attempt, and when it seemed like he was going to face Joe Biden. So obviously he was thinking, look, we're going to win this anyway. So what I need is a vice president that backs me to the hilt. J.D. Vance famously said that he would have, he wouldn't have approved the sort of making Joe Biden president after the election. He would have sort of sided with Donald Trump and said it was stolen, and sort of basically tried to completely undermine the Constitution. So Donald Trump is thinking, if I'm winning, I want this guy J.D. Vance here. Also, I suppose he's thinking that would lessen the motives for anyone to assassinate him, because if he gets killed, obviously his vice president becomes president. If his vice president is very similar to him, then that's helpful for the project. But as you say, Aaron, now Joe Biden is no longer the candidate. It looks like it's going to be a bit more competitive, and J.D. Vance doesn't bring much to the race.